Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So today we're looking at a demographic that's, well, it's everywhere and nowhere at the same time. The invisible workforce. I'm talking about unpaid caregivers. The millions of people, mostly women, but plenty of men too, who are, quietly holding society together, caring for an aging parent, a partner with a chronic illness, a child with high needs. It's just grueling, it's isolating, and it's usually completely unrecognized work.
Invisible workforce is the perfect term. I mean, economists, they try to put a dollar value on it, and it's always in the billions. But the emotional cost, that's what we're really looking at today.
Exactly. And, usually when we talk about this, we're looking at a news article or maybe a study. But today, the source material is really different. It's a draft operational guide. It's titled The Christian Care Mentor. I have to be honest, when I first opened this file, I expected a pamphlet.
Right.
Maybe some nice floral imagery, a few Bible verses, maybe that hang in there cat poster vibe.
And instead, you got an operations manual.
I got a system. It's dense. It's structured. And the origin story of this document is honestly a bit of a trip. It's like a Frankenstein monster, but in a good way.
It is a fascinating blend. This isn't just one pastor's idea of how to be nice to people. The text makes it clear right up front that this is an international collaboration. It starts with Carers WA in Australia.
It's Western Australia, right?
Correct. So they built a foundational model for peer mentoring. Then that model gets picked up and adapted by the Ontario Caregiver Organization, the OCO in Canada, which is a secular professional body. And now we have this document, which takes that secular evidence-based structure and refines it into a Christ-centered ministry tool.
But here's the part that really made me do a double take. The intro explicitly credits the development support to Perplexity, Gemini, and ChatGPT.
I saw that.
I mean, we're talking about a spiritual care guide that openly admits, hey, we used large language models to help build this.
That is just wild to me.
You usually think of ministry and AI as being on, opposite sides of the spectrum.
It creates a really interesting tension, doesn't it? But if you think about it, it actually validates the content. It means this isn't just based on what feels right. It's built on a massive synthesis of data, research, best practices from all over the world, which the AI helped collate, and then it was reviewed by humans for the spiritual nuance. It's ancient wisdom meets modern efficiency.
It's high-tech empathy. But okay, let's get into the actual meat of it. The mission. The text talks about equipping experienced caregivers to walk alongside others, but it uses this specific phrase to define the role that I really wanted to dig into: stewardship of lived experience.
That's the anchor concept right there.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate for a second. Stewardship is a very churchy word. Why not just say sharing your experience? Why did that have to be stewardship?
Because sharing is casual. You share a pizza. You share a story at a bar. Stewardship implies management. It implies responsibility. If you've gone through the trauma of caring for a dying spouse or raising a child with severe disabilities, that pain is a resource. It's something valuable. Stewardship means you're taking that raw, painful material and managing it intentionally to benefit someone else.
So turns the pain into an asset.
Exactly. But, and this is a huge but, it's not about you being the expert. The guide is extremely careful to distinguish a care mentor from a counselor or a therapist.
Right. The scope of practice section is practically in bold letters. No therapy, no medical advice.
And that leads to the core values. The guide lists hope, empathy, equality, and self-determination. And I want to pause on equality because I think it's easy to just gloss over that one.
Yeah, sounds nice. We're all equal.
But in a helping relationship, that is actually very rare. Usually, if I'm helping you, I'm up here and you're down there. I have the resources, you have the need. This guide flips that. It says this is a mutual relationship based on shared lived experience. It's not a hierarchy. It's two people on the same road, just at different mile markers.
Okay, I'm with you on equality, but I have to push back on the next value: self-determination.
Why? What's the issue?
Well, look, if I'm a mentor and I've successfully navigated the healthcare system for my aging dad, and I see you struggling with the exact same forms, I want to tell you what to do. I want to say, don't call that number, call this one, or you need to stop letting your brother walk all over you.
Of course you do. That's the human instinct to fix things.
Right. But the guide basically says, don't do that. It says the goal is to respect the caregiver's ability to discern what is right for their own journey.
That feels, inefficient. If I have the answer, why can't I just give it? Because if you give them the answer, you're creating a dependency. You're solving the immediate problem, yes, but you aren't helping them build the muscle to solve the next one. And deeper than that, advice giving often comes from our own anxiety. We want to fix it so we feel better.
Oof. Okay. So my need to give advice is actually about me being uncomfortable with your pain.
Often, yes. The guide talks about being channels of grace. The idea is that your presence is the intervention, not your brilliance, not your Rolodex of contacts, but your willingness to sit and mess with them without trying to tidy it up. That is self-determination. It's trusting that they are the expert on their own life, even if their life is currently on fire.
That is incredibly hard to do. To watch someone make what you think is a mistake and just be there.
It's the hardest thing in the world, and that's why this isn't just a sign up on a clipboard kind of volunteer gig. The vetting process in this document is rigorous.
Yeah, I looked at the checklist. It's intense. Application forms, liability agreements, screening interviews, and specifically reference checks.
Which, in a church or community context, is vital.
Why specifically there?
Because we need to be honest. Faith communities can sometimes be porous when it comes to privacy. We've all heard the prayer request. That is actually just gossip in disguise. Oh, we really need to pray for Sarah. Her husband is drinking again.
Right, the Trojan horse gossip.
Exactly. This program shuts that down hard. The reference checks and the confidentiality agreements are there to ensure that this person can hold a secret. Because caregivers are vulnerable. They're often angry, maybe at their spouse, maybe at God. If they vent that to a mentor and it gets out, that's devastating.
So the rigor is about creating a safe container. And part of that container is the matching process. I love that the profiles are anonymized, first names only.
And look at what they match on. It's not just personality, it's the grim details. Diagnosis, relationship, age group.
Which makes sense. If I'm caring for a toddler with autism and you're caring for a husband with Alzheimer's, we're both caregivers, but our worlds are totally different.
The empathy wouldn't land the same way. The program wants that Me Too moment to be specific. But once you're matched, that's when we run into the most controversial part of this entire document, the boundaries.
I was waiting for this.
Yeah.
Because when I read the communication section, I actually laughed out loud. I thought, there is no way this is enforceable.
The phone-only rule.
Care mentors must never meet the caregiver in person.
Yeah.
Never. No coffee, no house visits, no walks in the park. And they suggest blocking your caller ID.
It sounds incredibly cold, doesn't it? Especially for a ministry that calls itself walking alongside. It's more like walking alongside from 5 miles away.
It feels artificial. I mean, we're building this deep spiritual connection, and I'm pouring my heart out to you for months.
Yeah.
And then I say, hey, let's grab a burger, and you say, sorry, it's against policy. That feels like a rejection. Doesn't that kill the intimacy?
I totally get that reaction. But let's look at the why provided in the text. The experts who designed this, remember the OCO and CARES WA, they argue that this boundary is what actually saves the relationship.
How does not seeing someone save the relationship?
Because of the kitchen sink problem?
The what?
Imagine you go to the caregiver's house. You're there to provide emotional support, but you walk in and the house is a wreck because they're exhausted. There are dishes in the sink. The person they care for is in the other room needing water. What do?
I mean, I'm a human being. I wash the dishes. I get the water.
Exactly. And the moment you do that, the relationship changes. You are no longer a peer mentor listening to their heart. You are a housekeeper. You are a respite worker. You are a nurse. The scope creeps until it swallows you whole, and then you burn out.
So the phone is a shield.
It's a filter. It strips away the visual cues that trigger our fix-it reflex. On the phone, I can't see your dirty dishes. I can't see that you haven't showered. All I have is your voice and your story. It forces the focus to stay 100% on emotional and spiritual support. It protects the sacred space from the tyranny of the urgent.
That is actually really profound. It's limiting the sensory input so you can focus on the soul.
Precisely. And it protects safety, too. Remember, these are strangers connecting over trauma. Keeping addresses and workplaces private prevents stalking, it prevents dependency, it keeps everyone safe.
Speaking of dependency, there's another limit that shocked me. The time limit. You sign up for a year as a mentor, but the specific relationship with a caregiver, recommended for only 6 months.
This is the other half of the sustainability coin.
But again, it feels harsh. Okay, you're healed now, bye.
It's not about being healed. It's about preventing codependency. The guide is very clear that the goal is intentional support. It's a bridge, not a parking lot. If I know I have you for 6 months, we're going to work on building your resilience, your network, your coping skills. If I'm there forever, you might start using me as a crutch.
It's the difference between physical therapy and a wheelchair.
That's a great analogy. Physical therapy has a discharge date. The goal is to get you strong enough to walk on your own. and for the mentor. Knowing there's an end date makes the weight bearable.
That's a good point. If I asked you to hold a 50-pound weight, your first question would be, for how long?
Exactly. If I say forever, you drop it immediately. If I say for 10 minutes, you can hold it. This guide says, you can carry this person's burden for 6 months. That makes empathy sustainable.
So limits make love possible.
I think that is the headline of this entire document.
Let's pivot to the how-to. Because if we aren't washing dishes, and we aren't giving advice, and we aren't meeting for coffee, what are we actually doing on the phone?
We're opening doors.
I loved that metaphor in the text. Opening doors, not pushing people through them.
It's so visual, isn't it? The guide talks about providing information resources, books, scripture, but always as an invitation. Pushing someone through a door saying, you have to read this book or you must join this support group is aggressive. It ignores their readiness.
It reminds me of sales. Nobody likes being sold to, but everyone likes being offered a solution when they're ready.
And that requires active listening, which is the primary skill listed. But the guide pairs it with something called burden bearing.
Which sounds heavy.
It is heavy, but the distinction the guide makes is crucial. Burden bearing doesn't mean taking the burden away. It means getting under the weight alongside them so they aren't crushed. It's the difference between saying, don't worry, it'll be fine, and saying, I know this is incredibly heavy, and I'm here with you while you carry it.
That validation is so powerful. I think for a lot of caregivers, they just want someone to acknowledge that their life is hard without trying to brightside it.
Validation is often the cure for isolation.
But doing that, bearing that burden, it takes a toll. And the guide acknowledges this in the final section we need to touch on, caregiver well-being. But it applies to the mentor too.
This was my favorite theological pivot in the text. We usually talk about self-care as a luxury, bubble baths, chocolate, me time.
Or we treat it as selfish. I can't take a nap. My husband needs me.
Right. But this document reframes well-being as faithful stewardship.
There's that word again, stewardship.
It says that your body, your mind, your emotions, these are tools God has given you. If you run them into the ground, you are mistreating God's property.
Yeah.
So taking a break, setting a boundary, saying, I can't talk right now, that isn't selfishness, that is maintenance.
That is a massive shift. It turns self-care into an act of obedience.
It essentially says, you cannot pour from an empty cup, and God doesn't expect you to. The savior complex is not a fruit of the Spirit.
So let's zoom out. We have this document, a blend of Australian research, Canadian professionalism, AI synthesis, and Christian theology. Yeah. It sets up these strict rules, phone-only boundaries, rigorous vetting. Why does this matter? Why did we spend all this time talking about a draft PDF?
I think it matters because it brings the invisible into the light. By creating a title care mentor and a manual and a process, this program is saying to millions of people, what you are doing is real work. It matters, and you shouldn't have to do it alone.
It validates the struggle.
And it creates a model for how we can help each other without destroying ourselves. We are entering an era where the population is aging, the care crisis is only going to get worse. We can't rely on random acts of kindness anymore. We need infrastructure. We need systems that allow compassion to scale.
That's the key, isn't it? Scalable compassion. Good intentions aren't enough. You need good guardrails.
And that leads me to the thought I've been chewing on since we started talking about the phone rule.
Lay it on us.
We usually think that boundaries are walls. We think they separate us from people. But looking at this guide, I'm starting to think that strict boundaries are actually the only thing that makes deep empathy possible.
Say more about that.
If I know I'm safe, if I know I'm not going to be asked to do more than I can handle, if I know there's an end date, I can open my heart completely. I don't have to hold back out of self-preservation. So maybe the cold rules of this guide are actually what allow the warmth to get through.
That is a beautiful paradox. The container has to be strong so the contents can be soft. Well, that is a lot to think about. Whether you are a caregiver, someone who wants to help, or just someone trying to understand how to love people better, there's something in this model for you. Thank you for unpacking this with me.
My pleasure.
And thank you to our listeners. We'll see you on the next deep dive.